Welcome to Leading for Wellness. I'm Liesl Bernard, CEO of Cologne Executive Search and Leading for Wellness events. Each week, we dive into the journeys of visionary wellness entrepreneurs, uncovering their secrets to success. Get ready for insightful conversations that will inspire you to elevate your business and prioritize your well-being. Let's dive in. Welcome, Tim Adams. I'm so excited about our conversation today. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time, so thank you very much for making the time to connect with me.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm excited to dive deep with you. So let's do it.
So, you've had the pleasure of working with Olympians, NFL athletes, and top executives for almost 4 decades in both mindset and body fitness recovery. So, if an executive is listening to this podcast today, what is the one thing that you think that they'll be able to walk away with if they listen to the whole conversation?
Yeah, great question. And I think the thing that I would love, and the thing I do love to do with my clients is get them to think about performance differently. And oftentimes, what I start with is a question, and the question I would ask each and every one listening is, what's performance costing you? Because I think a lot of times when we approach performance, it's this concept of an additive concept of we've got to add this, add that, we've got to do this and do that. And what I find is that it's more about subtraction. And so when we start to think about and calculate what is performance costing us, we can really look at performance and the leadership world more from almost like a concept of overtraining. Um, the the stress, the load of what we're carrying oftentimes impacts us in a way that we don't even know, and I call that kind of hidden impact a hustle tax, right? And so, ideally, what I ultimately want to get people to see and think about is how can they think about performance differently? How can I think about how I show up differently? And hopefully over the course of the next few minutes, we will be able to enlighten them on that. Hopefully.
Great. Yeah. So give us a little background. You've done this for a long time. What is sort of the foundation that you work from? And what types of coaching do you do for both athletes and executives?
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of times what I get is um, this baffling look when I often tell people that I've coached in the NFL, I've coached in the NHL, I've worked with the military special operatives, I've worked with entertainers, actors, artists, as well as executives, corporations, and founders, and they look at me like, well, how's that possible? How can you do that? And what I tell them is like the outfit changes, if you would, but the pattern really is the same, and it's the same for any high achiever. And I've been really fortunate to start in the world of the body as a strength coach, and from there I kind of morphed and adapted into writing a book on the mindset of performance, and then that led me into working with more corporate world slash entrepreneurs, and each time I went into a different realm, it just opened my eyes to how similar everybody really is, and really the human system doesn't change across all of them. And the common denominator for all of them is the human system. And so what I found was most people were operating from a system that was, for lack of better words, outdated. And 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 that the body was really kind of this gateway, if you would, to the mind. It was a gateway to the emotions. It was a gateway to the spirit, um, and ultimately, for me, a gateway to performance. And so I take the principles of sports performance and I bring it into um, the human. I bring it into the business world. I bring it into these founders that I work with, and it makes sense after we go through this process. But the reality is, when I first start talking about things, a lot of people get confused because they're talking when I talk about planning and programming and scheduling and preparation, most people think I don't have time for that.
Hmm.
And the reality is, if you start to honor your rhythm that you have in your system and your physiology and your psychology, and you start to overlap that over the things that are required of you in your business, you can become way more productive without having to add anything else to it except for aligning yourself with how you should be or do naturally operate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of executives, and I think we all fall prey to that, thinking that productivity is separate from spirituality and performance, and that, our emotions is something we can put aside until we have time to deal with that, but what you're saying is that when you refer to the system, it's mind, body, and spirit in order to have peak performance. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I would even add the emotional component to that, right? And so for me, when I look at this, what I call the internal operating system, it is the integration of the mind, the emotions, the spirit, and the body. And for me, you can't compartmentalize any of them. They have to be considered as a system, as a holistic approach to what it is that you're doing. And I have found that it's so common for, and it doesn't matter whether it's the business world, the military, or even in the sporting world. We do it in pro sports. Is you compartmentalize every little thing, and when you do that, you lose the integration between those components, and I think that's a challenge.
And you
And
lose yourself probably too, right?
so well said. And you absolutely lose yourself, and that's a challenge. I mean, you and I see it from a place of performative nature. Like, it's a mask that we put on where we're trying to perform because we think that we're this, or we think that we're that, or we have to stay in our lane and know our role when we know that the reality is we can do so much more than what we're being tasked to do. And so, yeah, it's easy to lose yourself in that world. Um, and on the flip side of that, it's easy to get lost in the success of that world as well. And then you start to think that you are it. And and that's a challenge in and of itself. And I've been fortunate to not only be around it, but live it myself. And it's been a painful and yet beautiful journey as well. So
You said once before that your biggest lesson didn't come from a classroom, and it actually happened on the sports field when you were in your late teens.
mhm.
Can you share more about that and how you kind of came to understanding all this better?
Yeah. So I've had a couple of experiences, but I'd say like the whole premise behind what it is that I do started really early. I was in high school and had shin splints, and I couldn't. I was on. We were running track. It's my spring semester of my senior year, and I couldn't run, and so my coach said pick a field event. So I did, and picked a discus, and I thought, it's going to be simple. You just pick up a discus, you spin, throw it, and that's it. And my first meet was like a complete disaster, and it was very embarrassing. Um, I scratched my first go. The second go, I almost took off the uh, marshal's head, and then my third one, I finally did it, but it didn't go anywhere. And so when I was finished, I saw our rival high school coach, who happened to be one of the best coaches in the state, um, and he was really good at the field events, and we didn't have a field event coach. So I asked him if he'd coach me, and he was like, I coach for the rival high school. He ended up saying yes. I go down, and for the first week, I didn't even have a discus in my hand. It was all technique. It was like footwork. It was body position. It was learning to get into the right position and sequencing, and it was very precise. And the words that he chose, and the sequence in which he forced me to move my body, and the sequence in which he used the cues was very precise. And I started to learn this concept of precision. And just a few weeks later, once I started getting the discus in my hand, it just started flying out of my hand. And I ended up winning districts, qualifying for states. And it was from that moment forward that I realized that not only learning from the best matters, but how you do what you do, it matters. And so um, I became a technician, if you would, and I started to learn and figure out like what is required of performance and what are the steps and what is the sequence and this whole concept of precision kind of was born out of that. And it's funny because, in the last 40 years, I've had clients are like, well, why is that important? Why are you so concerned about this tiny little movement? And 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 it's been a really beautiful journey because it's like I can explain how if you let your knee buckle in and you can't control that movement, well, you increase your chances of having an ACL. And it's the same thing with thinking is if you allow your mind to wander in a moment that you're attempting to be focused, well, you, you're going to go off path. And if you do that, you're just reinforcing what I call a faulty motor pattern. And if you're not aware of these patterns and you don't see them, then you're just going to reinforce that pattern. And because of that, your performance will diminish. And so that's ultimately why you get a coach. It's ultimately why you work on your awareness. But it's these little tiny things. And I'm sure you've heard the saying that small hinges open big doors. And that's really kind of the whole premise behind this is that these small, intricate nuances make a big difference in performance. And I think so many people chase like a hack or this big factor that they think is going to make this big difference when the reality is it's just a small little tiny tweak that if they just righted their ship slightly, that the the
Mm.
the end result of that would be a massive change in their performance. The
I want to
key,
I want I want to go back a little bit
yeah,
to mindset because I think what you said there a minute ago was pretty profound where if you can change your mindset or your thinking about something or control your mind, that could make, you know, whether success or failure is going to be possible. And I think there's so much out there these days about, controlling your mind and thinking positive and visualizing and all that. But I think it's become almost cliche. But how important is mindset and being able to control your mind, which is so difficult to do these days with, so many distractions we have. But, and that's really, I think, a key thing to success that people sort of go, oh, yeah, mindset's important, but really my actions are, or how I dress or how people see me is more important.
yeah.
Let's focus a bit on mindset and what that really means.
Well, thank you for that. And I do believe that mindset is absolutely critical and it needs to be trained just like a muscle needs to be trained and can be built just like a muscle can be built. And it's a skill. And so um, I think there's some things that I'd like to discuss around mindset that most people don't discuss. And that's this concept of alignment. And I think when we are aligned with our highest values, it's really easy to step in to doing the things that you love to do. Because I think a lot of people mistake this concept like I am not disciplined or I am not um uh I don't have enough willpower to get this done. And I it's funny because like when people have procrastination or they have experiences where they're just not being productive, I don't look at productivity hacks for them. I don't look at the how can we do this better? I actually take a step back and I look at like you're not aligned with what it is that you want to do. Because if you need accountability to do something, then you don't love what you're doing. And I would
Hmm.
challenge that you may want to look at doing something differently because if you need someone else to tell you that you're not doing what you should be doing, then you shouldn't be doing it in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's one piece of it. And when you understand that, because I learned this really early on, and my first big marquee professional athlete back in '98, we're running on a track, and he comes up to me in between sets, and we're doing some soft tissue manual therapy, and he gets on the table and he goes, "You know what, Tim? I love preparation." as much, if not more than the competition. And I was young at the time and I was like, what are you talking about? Because to me, it was all about competition. Like I thought, the whole penultimum of pro sports is competing. And for him, he loved the preparation side of it so much that it it wasn't work for him. And like I was spending 12 hours a day with this guy, and from 6 in the morning till 6 at night, and sometimes 9 at night, he was preparing his body for the season. And when you think about that, like that's pretty common now today in pro sports. It's got, people are spending millions of dollars doing that. But back in the 90s, that wasn't a common thing. And his mindset was like, this is I it was a like, he was grateful for the opportunity to be able to do what he was doing, to build his body, his mind, his emotions, to be able to go perform. And I think when you are aligned with your highest value, that happens, and you do things because it's what you love to do, and it's generative. It actually gives you energy.
Hmm.
And so,
That's
um
purpose, right?
exactly, and so
Hmm.
now that's why I'm a real like, for me, that falls under the spiritual side of things, because when you're aligned with your calling, it pulls you towards what it is that you're supposed to be doing, and when that happens, like, it's easy, like, you don't work a day in your life. Like, I've been coaching for 40 years, and, man, I've put in years where I was working 20 hours a day, but it wasn't work to me. It was like, it's just, it was like, I loved it. I did it. And I didn't think twice about doing it. And look, there were some moments in that period of time where like, I certainly forewent my health to do those things. But that was part of my journey of learning where my boundaries were and what was truly important for me. But the bottom line is, like, I'm very fortunate that I found what I love very early on, and I went all in on it. And that's the same kind of the lesson I got from this guy, is that your alignment with your calling, with what you value, what you love, is really important, because then things are easy. Like, you don't have to struggle to get things done. You naturally want to jump up, get in, and start doing it. And that mindset is really important. And and when you have that mindset, you don't have to fight thinking that I have to be disciplined, because it's more devotion. Like, when you're
Yeah.
aligned with your values, you're in devotion.
But some people have struggle in finding their purpose. I think there's so much out there about this is what success looks like. This is what, you need to be in order to be accepted in society, etc. So what do you think the steps are for someone that's listening that's saying, you know what, that sounds well and great, but I have no clue because there's nothing that I feel that passionate about. And I may be in what society perceives to be a great role. I may be a CEO, I may be an executive in a very lucrative role, but I don't have what you're describing. How do you help people define what their passion and purpose is?
Yeah, and it may not be the role. It might, and I say role, like, it might be that it may not be the job, it might be the role, or might not be the role, it might be the job. And I what I mean by that is, like, I believe that we have experiences, and those experiences, um, form us, they shape us, and um, they give us an opportunity to adapt. And oftentimes that adaptation I call a compensation, because we don't necessarily know what to do with what happened to us earlier. And as a result of that, we become an overgiver. We do whatever, like, we
Be a
become
people
a people
pleaser. Yeah.
pleaser. Absolutely. And that's what happened
Or
to me.
chasing. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you
Or
do, like,
chasing status or whatever.
and I have clients that became angry, and they use the anger to fuel themselves to get things done. Um, that that leads us to a place where we pound square pegs into round holes, and we start to do things that aren't really aligned with our highest value and our calling. And yet, and what I try to get people to do is take the time to stop and be still, because when you are still and you start to do this internal reflection and this deeper dive into yourself, it really opens your eyes to, oh, I do have this adaptation, and this adaptation actually has become my superpower. I'm really good at this. And then the question has to be, well, is that something that I'm being called to continue to do? Or is that something that I will use in what it is that I'm being called to do? And it might be both. Um, but the only way to really understand what you're called to do is to be in silence and to align yourself with, whether it's God, whether it's your higher self, whether it's the universe, whatever you want to call that, your worldview. For me, it's God. um, when you align with God, I think God reveals that to you when you're in stillness and connection with Him. And I think that most of us are not still and not listening to what is present for us and here for us. And that's the piece. And I do a lot of work around this, what I call sensory acuity, where you are allowing your sensory mechanisms, whether it's your hearing, your smell, your taste, your touch, your vision, or this sixth sense of what's in this space between us, um, being so attuned to it that you are being directed and guided by it. And that's an intuitive process. And
You
it's
got to
something
allow that to happen.
you
Yeah.
have to, but I also think
Hmm.
you have to develop it. Like,
Yeah.
you have to develop the sensory acuity to be able to listen to what's being spoken to you. Because here's the other piece of it is like, I think from a body perspective, societally, we've been taught to push, to grind, to like go
Override.
harder
Yeah.
and override our senses of pain.
Yeah.
Like I know, like I'm dealing with a tremendous amount of pain in a lot of different parts of my body right now. Like I haven't had an ACL for 41 years, and I'm bone on bone for almost 30 of those years. And I have pain every step I take. And if I don't do stuff to care for my knee on a daily basis, I'm hobbling around. But that pain inhibits my sensory awareness. And so I have to navigate my pain in order to minimize it, in order to be aware of what is my body trying to tell me. What is and that's a piece that it's so funny. Like, I think so many people are so disconnected from their body that they don't even listen to what their body's saying. It's in too much tension, it's in too much pain. It's just, we think of our body as a vehicle to get us from point A to point B, and we dismiss it, when the reality is our body is our main sensory antenna for communicating.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And I think more and more people are accepting that energy is, you know, our energy is what really fuels us, and there's so much perception to what's around us if we allow that to come in. And then you come into the left brain right brain thing, right? I think as a society we're completely left brain, we overthink everything, and unless we can see logically how you're going to get from point A to point B, that's the only way we see possibility. And yet, if we allow our right brain to come in and we start tuning in to guidance from wherever, whatever you believe in, and you start tuning into your body, there's so many answers that come from that. And also, possibility becomes so much bigger because you're not looking at your human capacity to make things happen, but you're allowing to conspire with something greater than you. Um,
couldn't agree with you more on that. And that is like, then that piece of allowing for that to actually happen, right? Because again, this other piece of
Surrender.
exactly, and a lot of people that get things done like control, and they don't like to surrender to what is, when the reality is that's the thing that's going to get them to the next level. And and it's that piece of trying to hold on that is, again, part of that hustle tax, is like there's a cost to that. And that cost can be debilitating physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, in your relationships, in your ability to be productive. So how can we be aware and then navigate the world in a different realm, like you're discussing? It's like we do have to operate differently at a different level. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm not dismissing hard work. Like, hard work is required to overcome inertia. Hard work is required to create lift in an organization. And and then once you have momentum, then we have to really look at, is hard work necessary to continue to create the lift? We've already got the lift. Now we can modify it. And this is, I think, the biggest challenge for most um, founders that I work with is they they never switch out of being on. And so like they're in this what I call a never ending season. Like they're always constantly on. And it's learning how to navigate the rhythm, right? There's a rhythm to everything. And we have our natural rhythm. The launch has a rhythm, the IPO has a rhythm, the funding round has a rhythm. The challenge is after it's over, we don't take a step back and start to
And
reevaluate,
recover. Yeah.
not just recover, but reevaluate the structure in which we're operating. We kind of now take on that grind structure and we bring it into the next phase of what it is that we're doing. And so we never recover. And then if you really truly understand your own rhythm, there's moments of opportunity without and throughout the day for recovery. But if you don't honor that rhythm, then you're pushing through a lull and you're trying to create during a lull when you should be really operating from a place of um,
Receiving again. Yeah.
either receiving or just doing mundane tasks so that your mind recovers and you're just on an automatic mode for a while so that when you get your second wind of your next rhythm of creativity, you're ready for it. But when you try to push through that period, which most of us do, whether it's through um, a stimulant, whether it's through a nootropic, whether that's through whatever, it it then now creates a phase shift in our ability to be productive, in our ability to honor our own rhythm. And then we get into what, again, is called overtraining. We're overtaxed. And as a result of that, then ultimately our productivity diminishes, right? And so there's these moments of structure throughout the day that allow us to recover throughout the day. But if you don't take advantage of those, and then at the end of the day, you're like, okay, now I've got to recover. It's almost, it almost becomes too late. Like it's like you're maxed out, you blew out, like you redlined, and now you're going to have to actually do some restructuring. You're going to have to take the car into the shop to get fixed, right? Like you're going to have to get fixed.
Burnout. It's called burnout, right?
It is. Yeah, it is. Overtraining is in a sense burnout, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And um,
So if someone's listening to this right now, what are the things that they can maybe step back and reflect on? And if they want to start incorporating more moments during the day where they do connect with their body, they do connect with guidance, and they maybe take some time to, you know, meditate for a few minutes, what are the things that someone can do to say, hey, I think I'm in that phase where I don't know how to switch off anymore. And I feel like I'm becoming less and less productive and struggling with, maintaining.
well, yeah, and I'd say the first question is what you just said. It's like, well, w- are my I'd first go like, what's my energy like throughout the day? And am I able to notice when I have a lull? And is that lull a normal phase for me? Or is it because I'm overworked? I didn't get sleep last night. And you'll know, like if you really mapped out your day
And you're in tune with your body.
and you're in
Yeah.
tune with your body, and you're also in tuned with your natural rhythm. Like I'm a morning person, so I'm the early bird, right? Um, Other people are night owls. Like I am not productive at night. In fact, don't even ask me to be productive at night. Like that is not my go-to point in time. But early in the morning, that's when I'm creative. That's when I produce. And that's why my rhythm and my routine honors that, right? But I also know I have a lull during the midday, but then I have another little moment of productivity later in the afternoon. And so I honor these little blocks, right? And so the first thing I say is know your rhythm. Like really understand what blocks of the day are you the most creative?
You
What
gotta be
blocks of
honest
the day
with yourself, yeah.
you do have to be honest with yourself. And by mapping that out, now you can now protect your calendar. Now I know there's things that you can't control and people are going to get on your calendar and there's things you're going to have to do that are going to be in these moments. There's certainly things you can do to perform at a high level during a lull moment. Like and we can certainly talk about that. But that's an advanced strategy. If you start to honor your rhythm, you can start to say, like, I'm actually going to block out from 8 to 10 because I'm the most productive here. If I'm in meetings during that time, I'm
It's
wasting
a
my
waste
time.
of your time, yeah.
Exactly. And so I'm gonna set all my meetings up later in the day. And I'm gonna take this time to create. It's the time I'm gonna go pitch. It's the time I'm gonna do my building of my business. And but if you're a night owl, and you try to do that early in the morning, you're gonna be like blah, 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 like you're not gonna be productive during that time. And so again, honoring yourself and say, all right, well, instead, I'm actually not gonna go into work till 10 and that may not be feasible, but I'm just saying like that might be your rhythm and you're working from 10 to midnight, right? That could be your rhythm. And, and everybody on your team has a rhythm. Your organization has a rhythm. And so it's understanding that. And then how can you start to navigate and manage? Like it's a lot of work. It is, but when you can do it and you can see it, it ends up being this beautiful dance that you end up doing where and that's the whole beauty of team sports is like being able to bring all these different rhythms together to be able to peak in a moment, a game or competition, right? And so you're just navigating this and how can you start to um, manufacture load to stimulate your team and yourself to be able to produce and expand your own capacity so that you're growing simultaneously, right? Like because this is the piece that I don't think, well, I'm pretty clear. Most of the leaders that I've ever worked with, they don't think this way. They think I got to take it easy because I've got this, or I can't work out in the morning because I've got this. And I'm like, no, you have to do that because you have to build the engine. You have to build the capacity so that you are going to be able to have sustainability for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years to come. Because if you're trying to protect yourself now, you're not going to have the capacity then.
Yeah.
And that's an
And I think that's
oversight.
part of scaling an organization as well. You know, I think
Totally.
there's a lot of data out now that if CEOs hold on too tight and they want to be involved with everything and they want to make decisions on everything, you'll never be able to scale a business effectively. So you've got to have a plan to detach so you can stay more in your creative space and you can continue with strategy and growth. But I think especially with entrepreneurs who, who have their businesses that they started, that is suffocating the business so often, but it's part of their identity and you can't let it go.
And you just nailed like a word that's really dear to my heart, and that's identity. And I do believe in to go back to the mindset piece, identity is the foundation of all of it. Like most of the work I do with my clients is identity based. Like it, it looks like mindset, but the reality is it's at the root and core, the identity, because who
There
we
you
are
go.
being is will dictate what we can do in order to accomplish our calling. And so part of it is the alignment of the identity with the actions so that we can fulfill on our calling. And and if our calling is really big, the reality is we may not fulfill on it in our lifetime, but we have to set up like and a good example is like you think about is Elon Musk actually going to get to Mars in his lifetime? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not, but he certainly has a big
He's
calling
reaching for it.
to
Yeah.
exactly, right? And he's creating the infrastructure and the structure for it to endure past his lifetime. So,
Yeah.
and that's how I think we need to think as founders and as executives and entrepreneurs, like it's bigger than us. And
I'm
so,
a big believer in vision, and I think
yes,
we haven't really touched on that because I think it vision is something that you create when you identify your purpose,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And that's so important, and having a clear vision, and especially for a leader to be able to articulate vision
Mm,
is key,
totally.
because you won't create a culture where people are highly invested if you can't articulate that vision very clearly. And I think that's a key aspect that I think, we don't often talk about. And how do you help clarify that vision, and how does it change as, you continue to grow in yourself?
Yeah,
So maybe you can shed some light on that.
absolutely. And I think, and again, the vision is the articulation of, for me, the calling, right? Like, and you even said it, like it's aligning with that bigger picture. And again, it comes back to knowing yourself. And the more you know yourself, the better you're going to be able to articulate that vision. The other piece of that I do with a lot of my clients is getting them to start to think differently about how they do communicate. And what I mean by that is, mm, no one is going to think the exact same way as you. And so the question is, how can you speak to someone from a left brain and a right brain perspective? How can you speak to someone from a contextual as well as a concrete perspective? And you do that by being able to navigate this conversation from both a story based perspective and a fact based perspective. And really, it ends up becoming like a case study, if you would. And so the vision wrapped in a story around, hey, this is where we're going. This is how we're going to do it. And this is how it's going to impact everybody involved, ends up being something that people can how would I say this? Many people can understand, because you're going to hit both left brain and right brain. You're going to be big picture and you're going to get into the weeds. And you want to be able to go up and down that ladder at will, right? And so for me, it's alignment with your purpose, your calling. It's being able to articulate, what does that look like contextually? What's that look like from a content perspective? And how can I articulate this story with the data, creating, if you would, a case study to be able to navigate both left and right brain, as well as context and concept content. Um, and that's more of like a really practical application of, how do you communicate in such a way to inspire others to move? Because at the end of the day, if we as leaders are communicating how we like to communicate, we're going to miss at least half of the organization. And so in order for us to bring everybody along, we actually have to speak differently, we have to teach differently, we have to lead differently. And the only way to do that is to understand this ladder of abstraction and being able to navigate between the left and right brain communication. Um,
Yeah, that's so powerful. I think one of the other concepts I'm really fascinated by, and the more I learn about it, I understand how powerful it is, because I think most of us operate from our brain. We think, right? Everything comes from our mind. But, I think truly successful people that work with passion also connect with their heart. So having that heart brain coherence, and Joe Dispenza talks about this a lot. I think that's also aligning left and right brain, when you activate your heart and you start feeling what feels right and what the right next step would be. And then when you do communicate, you communicate also from your heart. We work with people. That's just my business. I work in executive search. So, I always tell my team, and we actually do an exercise every morning where we actually connect with our hearts before we start our day, because we're in the people business, right? You've got to be able to sense what people need, what they want, what our clients are looking for. And it's not a job description and a resume. You're dealing with people that have goals and dreams and their own purpose and vision, and you've got to have the ability to connect with that. So, do you incorporate that in your training as well?
I do. And I do it a little differently than that. What I was going to say is like, I think the heart brain connection and coherence is extremely important. And, um, I think, um, your HRV is related to that. And I think that is an important marker too for knowing how recovered you are, but also how open you are. And the other piece of that for me is I look at the body from like four distinct sections. The mind, and for me, I look at the diaphragms of the body. So we have a diaphragm here, the epiglottis, and then you've got the heart, and then from between the heart and like the gut, we have another diaphragm, the big diaphragm, right? And then between the gut and say our primal area, you have the pelvic floor, which is also a diaphragm. And so there's this distinct connections between the body. And I believe that we have to communicate from all four. And there's no science to this by any means, but it's something that I believe to be true. And this is that like obviously we have the brain. The heart has been researched to be its own brain. Our gut has been determined to be a brain. And if you look at our primal area, a lot of people would say, oh, like most men think with that brain. Um, and so I do believe that there is a brain in our primal area. I do. I just don't think it's been researched or found yet.
Well, I
And
think
again,
it's the chakras. I think if we go
totally
back
right.
to traditional Eastern philosophies, that's very easily explained by our different chakras, and there's energetic components to each one of those chakras.
Exactly. And so for me, when I look at communicating and connecting, I want to connect from all four of those components because if I do, I know I'm hitting everybody in an audience because some people are going to be super primal. Some people are going to be very rooted, right? And very grounded. And that would be that lower section. And then there's going to be the people that are intuitive and follow their gut. And then there's going to be people that are very open and with their heart and they want to be very emotionally connected. And then there's going to be the logical
Throat chakra,
and,
yeah.
and well, yeah. And we could break it down even further into that, right? All the chakras. And I wasn't considering that when I was talking about this because I was talking about these four sections that if you speak from them and my goal with my clients is how can I get you to embody all of who you are at the level at which you understand yourself in this moment to be able to connect with who's present for you and to be able to do that like it's an evolution like who you are today is not going to be who you are tomorrow or at least I hope it's not because I hope you're evolving right and as evolve then and I grow deeper into my understanding of myself then I show up differently. I'm more connected to my heart and to my soul and to my primal area in such a way that I can speak without like force. I speak with power. I speak with presence. I speak with this, um, what I call gravitas, where people can't take their eyes off you because you're so connected, you're so embodied, and you're so influential, for lack of a better word, because you are you and you're unapologetically you, you're authentically you. And it's not something that you are trying to be, it's who you are. And
Yeah.
that's the work. Like to me, that's the work that matters the most.
Yeah, I love the word authentic because I think, the difference between someone in the world wanting to give back to the world versus someone that's a consumer of the world is a very different energy, right? And I think we all have the opportunity to give to the world in some shape or form. And, that if you can be in that energy, your authenticity is real and true, right? And so I think there's a big question that I think we all have to ask ourselves, and I'm sure we're different at different times in our lives, but the more you want to give back to the world, I think your authenticity shines through because you're not there to say, "Hey, how are people perceiving me? What can I take from from the world?" So the consciousness of giving versus receiving is so powerful, I think, especially in leadership.
So powerful. And I will say this, like, I don't wanna, um I don't want to vilify the receiving piece because I think receiving is an important component as a leader because you that's part of the sensory acuities. You have to receive what's in the space in order to respond to it. Like and then there's a piece of being able to receive in general because I think a lot of leaders have a hard time receiving. They think they have to go it alone or do it alone or they are alone, right? Because being at the top is lonely. That's a common conversation I get is like, I have nobody to share this with. I have nobody to talk to. But this piece of giving, I think, is really important, and you really articulated that well because I think it's something that you, as a leader, it's like you're giving of yourself for
Your
something
purpose.
greater than
Yeah.
yourself, right?
Your purpose, your bigger purpose in this world. And I think we all have come to this world with gifts, right? And so we have to find our purpose in how we can create or make the world a better place or do art or, you
Right?
know, be a
Yeah.
great athlete. There's all ways of being purposeful, but I think it has to come from a place of giving because I don't think you can really have a sense of, I don't know, maybe I'm, over exaggerating here, but I don't think you can really have a sense of satisfaction if it doesn't come from a place of giving.
Yeah, and I think when you put it that way, like, what I was trying to refer to is that it's like the yin yang, like you're giving and you're receiving simultaneously, right? And yet in this space as the leader, you are giving and you have to create the container. It's your responsibility as the leader to hold the container for everybody in the container so that they can blossom, so that they grow and that they nurture. And then by them nurturing and being in this growth phase, it's actually giving back to you. And
Yeah.
that's the receiving part so that you can actually give more. Because the one thing I will say about leadership that I'm probably a little different than most people is that I believe like in self leadership first.
I
And
was just gonna say that.
I really believe that you have to, you really have to clean yourself up first and get aligned and become congruent so that you can lead authentically, that you can lead impactfully, that you can speak your truth. And I know for me, like I spent, man, so many years afraid to speak my truth, afraid to put a stick in the sand and say, this is what I stand for. And, and I'm not the only one because a lot of clients I work with, they have a hard time doing it too. And then there's the clients that don't have a problem with it. Man, that's awesome. And they didn't have those experiences that led to that. And it's easy then to tweak where they're at to get them to do more, right?
Yeah.
But it's the space of how can I be more authentically me so that I can show up unapologetically and stand for something while holding and building this container that my team, my organization, and even, the collective consciousness or even the human condition can evolve, can grow, can
Yeah.
prosper because
And I
that's
think really that's the foundation of your coaching is you're helping executives or performers or athletes create that container for themselves first, right? In
absolutely
order to hold their energy, not to pay the hustle tax, to work with more precision. And once they have that in place and they can give and take and they can listen to their rhythms, then they're in a place to authentically lead and, you know, activate their purpose. So
absolutely.
very powerful work that you're doing, Tim. I
Thanks.
can talk to you for hours. Honestly, I
Same.
love these kinds of conversations and
I do too.
it really, really activates my heart
Yeah.
to be able to talk to you like this. So thank you so much.
And thank you. And I love the work that you're doing. And I love that you are a leader who honors your heart, that honors who you are, and you're capable of speaking your truth. Like I love what you stand for, and I love what you're doing in this world. So thank you for having me.
This is such fascinating conversation, Tim. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about how you work, how they can access? Do you have group coaching sessions for executives, and how can they work with you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I have group. I do one-on-one as well. But I'm launching a group coaching program right now in July, and it'll be a cohort, a small group of leaders, founders that are making a change in the human condition. They're doing bigger things. And if you're someone who is burnt out, if your relationships are on the brink, if your health is diminished, and you are seeing that there's this hustle tax cost that you don't know what to do with, this 16-week program is designed to create a reset. It's designed to give you an understanding of your alignment with your values. It's to reset your nervous system, because oftentimes we don't have the capacity to handle more load. And so sometimes we just need to reset it in order to be able to get through this next phase, um, until we can build the capacity to handle more. Right. And this is not about building capacity yet. We have to reset the system. We have to get in alignment. We have to really structure our day, our system, in order to be able to move to that next phase. And then the next phase is really realigning and recalibrating. But this period is about stopping the bleeding, really helping you understand who you are, really creating that alignment so that you can get to that next stage, if that's of interest to you. So if any of this sounded intriguing to you, I would love to have a conversation with you. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, um, Timothy Adams, or Coach Tim Adams, or you can look at my website's Coach Tim Adams, and reach out to me either way. Would love to have that conversation.
Fantastic. I so enjoyed our conversation today,
Thank
Tim.
you.
Thank you
Thank
so much for your time and the amazing work that you're doing in the world.
thanks.
And yeah, would love to have you, on back on in a few months and talk
Yeah,
about how well the course went.
I appreciate that. Would love to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for tuning into Leading for Wellness. This podcast is powered by Leading for Wellness CEO and Investor Events and Colon Executive Search. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on your favorite social media platform. And to learn more about our services, visit leadingforwellness.com or colonsearch.com and follow us on Instagram as well.